Well, with this latest portal haul, Clark Lee is fortifying things in the trenches. Let's get it.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, what's up, everybody? It's the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. On this episode, we're going to discuss the impact of the latest 3 commitments that Vandy was able to land in the portal on the offense and defensive lines. Clinton Azubuike adds great depth to the tackle position, and Jaylon Stone, along with Mason Nelson, sounds like a line, along with Mason Nelson and Jaylon Stone, you're going to get a couple of dominant forces on the interior of the line of scrimmages too. And once Jaylon Stone gets fully healthy and fully healed from his ACL injury that he suffered last October or November, I should say, that should be really, really good. So fortifying the trenches is the exact move that needs to happen in this league. So this can only be great news for the Commodores. So another portal move that I don't necessarily understand, unless he was cut, is Jaylon Cardenas. There's not a ton of running backs on a team whose primary focus is to run the ball, so I'm not sure why he would choose to hit the portal, but I'll talk more about that later. Also, Mark Byington adds another weapon in the front court with forward A.K. Okirke from Cornell. Mark Byington learned the hard way that not having depth in the front court can be a not so great thing if you're trying to finish above 12th in the conference. So, and then the Vandy boys are finally in the top 10. They drop a game in which Tim Corbin was fuming over the lack of focus. We'll talk about that. And let's be honest, it was bound to happen sooner or later in a midweek game. Does it make me worried? Well, not really. We'll see what happens in Oxford before it becomes more concerning. But for now, it's kind of like a wait and see type thing. So, like I said, thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So, talking about these portal transfers, okay? This, again, when you look at additions to the portal, one of the things that you would think Vanderbilt would have needed even before Demarion Thomas entered the portal on the defensive line, even before anybody entered their name anywhere, what are the 2 things you would have said Vanderbilt needs? Offensive tackle, interior defensive line, because you can never have too many of those guys. All right, what have they added so far? They've added 2 defensive linemen and an offensive tackle. They're probably have their eyes on a running back from a certain Vandy State Aggie door from New Mexico State. That might be happening soon. That's hopefully the move to replace Cardenas. But hey, we'll talk about that later. I don't need to concern myself with that just yet. I want to give shine to the guys that are committed to Vanderbilt. So Clinton Azubuike, for one, I really like this one because at 6'8", 300 pounds, that's the kind of frame. That's an SEC frame right there. That the athleticism that he has, albeit his skills are very raw, his instincts are very raw. He's just now he's Nigerian by way of England and the NFL Academy, and then to Northern Arizona from there, and now he's to Vanderbilt. So he's in the SEC at 6'8", 300 pounds. His size and reach are 2 great things that you can't coach, that you can't teach. And he has 3 years to develop into a monster. He has 3 years of eligibility left, whether he stays all 3 of those years at Vanderbilt. With the transfer portal the way it is, I'm just counting on 1, okay? But he's still very raw, has a lot of athleticism, a lot of strength. I think he's going to be quality depth to that tackle position, probably a quick tackle even at 6'8". But this guy is incredible. The athleticism, the ability to use that to his advantage when he finally kind of understands the way the footwork the way the footwork works. I know that sounds odd, right? The way the footwork works, hand placement, things to kind of keep him on balance when guys are rushing, I think is going to be something that he has to really kind of focus on in his development. But, again, the athleticism that goes a long way into erasing a lot of mistakes that can be made if you're very raw. That makes up a lot of ground for a lot of things. So if he could just kind of learn how to play within his 6'8", 300-pound frame with leverage and with balance, I think that's going to go a long way in his development. And I think he's going to develop even more rapidly than anyone once thought. So I really like this move. There's some veteran guys in this offensive line, so you're not desperate for him to come in and contribute as a starter right away. If he ends up starting, great. He's 6'8", 300 pounds and athletic. But I think if he can grow and develop a little bit in a reserve role, get some minutes in some games, I think that'll help him go a long way in becoming that starter that we're probably going to need in a year's time, because Isaiah Glass, I think, is only got 1 year to play. And I think maybe both tackles. I think Henderson also only has a year. So this is a depth move. And speaking of offensive line, Josh Raymond enters the portal. He probably just barely got here, or if he even got here, I don't know. I don't think that one makes much sense either, because his path to playing time there wasn't a whole lot impeding that either. So who knows? But nonetheless, it is a very, very good thing when you can add quality depth at that position, and it is a very good thing if you can keep and develop that depth, because I think it'll go a long way into making your offensive line dominant like it should be. Okay. Now, also speaking of depth, you lose Demarion Thomas to the transfer portal, and you get two really good pieces. One of those pieces is probably going to be a little bit slower to develop because of an injury. But when he gets back, he is extremely disruptive. Jaylon Stone from Southeast Missouri State. I really, what limited film I was able to see of him, because, well, there's not really much out there on Southeast Missouri. But what I was able to see of him is that at 6'2", 290, he's able to play with some pretty good leverage. I think he could play with a little bit better leverage, but he's really good getting off the ball. I'd like to see him work his hands more. But again, he's got kind of a disruptive style about him. He comes off the ball really well. He can disrupt some things. I mean, he had a really, really good year before he went down. I think he had 32 tackles, five of those for loss, and 2 sacks in some limited action. He was a rotational starter, so they played a lot of defensive linemen in their scheme. I'm guessing he got hurt against Auburn, so his numbers probably aren't as good as you would hope they're going to be. I don't know what you're hoping for as an interior defensive tackle, but his ability to push the pocket is going to be extremely important. And I think getting disruptive guys like that can really help in this league, because if, like I said, in passing situations, if he can come in starting out as a situational rotational guy as he's getting healthy, that will only benefit his recovery and his ability to really kind of make an impact. He's probably more of his major impact is probably more so going to happen next year versus this year. This year is going to be his get right year. So you probably won't see him a ton, especially early on, but as the season goes on, you might start to see him as he gets more healthy and his feet under him. You might see him get in just a little bit more. But I really love this move, because I think the potential of what he can be and what he showed at SEMO, I think there's a lot of potential here, and I really like that. I really like that, and with the first two that happened prior to today. I was, speaking of which, I was sick the last 2 days. I'm kind of in catch up mode here, so bear with me on this. But I was had a stomach virus. Those are going around, so I don't wish that upon anybody. I promise you, even those orange people. I don't wish that on anybody. So, but these two guys they're not projects, but they are potential guys. They're starting off as reserves, but I think they're going to be really, really good. And then the third guy that as I was looking, I saw the Mason Nelson line. He's a defensive line transfer from Western Michigan. And here's the thing. He had 30 tackles. He had 8 for loss and 2 sacks. He had in 23, he had 30 tackle. And then in 23, he had 32 tackles, 5 for loss and 3 sacks. So he's what this shows me is that he's getting in the backfield. He's at 6'1", 310 pounds. He only has a year left, which honestly, is that really a real stat eligibility at this point? He could tell the NCAA, get out of here with that. So anyway, but he's a 3-star transfer. His transfer portal grade is 86, which I don't know what that means. But what I really like about it is his motor is outstanding. He has, again, he just like Stone, I think his ability to push the pocket from the interior, how gritty he is, how tough he is, just how much of a motor he has, and just his ability to just keep going and going and going and going and going, right? And I think with the luxury that Vanderbilt's going to have now with getting these two guys is, A, you're going to allow time for Jaylon Stone to get healthy on the defensive line. You're not going to have to rely on him right away, which is good. You have other guys that have been here, and also Mason Nelson. With him being in here, I think that's also going to give you another interior guy that has a low center of gravity that's going to be tough to block, that you can put in certain situations. They can be a little bit more intentional with situations. And the whole overall goal with all of this is to get pressure on the quarterback with just 4. That's been the goal from day one of this new 2025 season, is how are we going to, what are the ways we're going to get pressure from without having to blitz everybody? And this is one way. Get really disruptive, strong defensive tackles that can push the pocket from the inside. They're quick enough to push the pocket from the inside, that are strong enough against the run, that they're not just totally third and long only guys, but guys that can play multiple downs in different situations, run heavy, pass heavy, things like that. They'll have to kind of maneuver some guys around. But they have some really good quality depth there now as well. So, all in all, the depth along the lines now, I think, are going to be really, really good. I don't know if they're in it for any other offensive linemen. I'm pretty sure they probably are. With Joshua Raymond dropping out now, I'm pretty sure there's another tackle that's probably on the hook somewhere. But this is going to be great, man. This offensive line is taking shape. This defensive line is taking shape. Those are the two positions that are the most important to have your stuff figured out with. And then the rest of it will kind of work in lockstep with that. The receivers will be better. The tight ends will be better. The running backs will be better, and Diego Pavia will be better. Why? Because the offensive line is better. It's an 11-man game. It's 11v11. So, if 10 guys are great and one guy sucks, that one guy, that could make all the difference in the world, right? I know it seems silly to say that, but it absolutely is true. And when you really break it down, you want your outermost guy to be the worst as far as the least impactful, but it always finds its way of making an impact if one of your guys is weak. So that's really what it all boils down to. So when you get quality depth, that should be a thing that you feel good about. So I really like this depth. I think I'm very, very curious to the direction they're going to continue to go in the portal. More guys are jumping in. I guess I don't know why they're getting either bad advice or they're getting processed. I don't know. I'm not privy to any of that information, but nonetheless, you're seeing some changes, and I think they're quickly addressing those changes and addressing those needs, which is good. They're not dilly-dallying around. They're not They're not, da-da-da-da-da. They're not playing it like they're going through the process, and they're going through it pretty fast, and they're getting some quality guys. So that's a step in the right direction from the quote same old Vanderbilt, right? That everyone loves to go back to, like, oh, it's just Vanderbilt. Yeah, they had a 7-win season, but it'll take them 3 more years to win 7 games again, right? That's old Vandy, right? The brand new Commodores are a team that's going to have their blankety blank together in the NIL period. So really, really excited about these three transfers. And another transfer I'm excited about that's going to play his games in Memorial Gym. That's A.K. Okirky. We'll talk about him next. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Well, between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO. giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, so you just stop managing your money and start building wealth. Well, surprising insights are these, man. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on things like food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. And it's just that all-in-one convenience, man. It's second to none. And I don't have to juggle multiple apps. I can use Monarch to check my finances, track my spending, and even plan long-term goals. And managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without all the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Hey, welcome back. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every single day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And speaking of every day, thank you to the everydayers. Thank you to the first timers, long timers, third segment timers, third segment listeners, first through third segment listeners. Thanks to all of you who enjoy my football, basketball, and baseball talk. So that's I like having you guys around. Bring a friend next time. Also, bring a friend to the show. Let me know how we're doing at Locked On Vandy if you want to follow that. But if you need a second listen, Locked On SEC should be the place to go. Chris Gordy is on fire right now with all this transfer portal stuff. The NFL draft is coming up, so I'm sure there's a lot of buzz there. I don't know where Vanderbilt's guys are going to go. If they get drafted, probably day 3, realistically. But those times are going to change too. There's going to be some guys, I think next year they're going to get drafted high, like Brandon Fontenette, I think could be a day 2 pick in the future. But we'll see. But anyway, all of that's all over our network of shows. The Locked On NFL shows are great. The Locked On College shows are great for any of those draft prospects. If you're a fan of the draft prospects or the draft process and just want to listen to all those shows, if you're into Dynasty League football, I don't know. Whatever you're into, I'm sure there's a show for it. So go listen to that. But Locked On SEC is the first place I'd go after this show. But anyway, speaking of transfer portal guys, this one excites me because even though he's not going to be a starter, right? Because you got Tyler Tanner, you've got Tyler Nickel, you've got Devin McLaughlin, then you've got Jalen Washington, and probably you might have room for one more. I don't know how the lineup is going to go. He's going to fit right into that somewhere. He might just be like a 6-man off the bench that's going to come in, razzle-dazzle you, whatever, for like 20 minutes a game, score a bunch of points. Like his points per minute is probably going to be insane. And then, he's like an energy guy, like the Energizer Bunny. Like he just runs you around and then the starters come back in and, the other team's worn out. So I think that's a potential thing for AK or Kirky. I mean, there's plenty of time. He could probably work himself in the starting lineup if you really, if they found a niche for him. But what I really like about him, he brings much needed scoring ability to the forward position. That's something they needed really badly last year. McLaughlin could score a little bit. Jalen Carey could score a little bit. But I think this guy's kind of more of like a true scoring forward, kind of, I don't want to say Scottie Pippen, but like, I don't know, 13 points per game from the forward position, 4.6 rebounds a game, 4.1 assists per game. He's a 60% shooter from the field, 32 from three-point line. I mean, he can score. He can get after it. And he was just as good in his big games against power conference opponents than he was, in his regular Ivy League games. But, as of this moment, now a lot can change. He projects to be a reserve, but again, I think he's, if he's a reserve, if the lineup doesn't shake out the way that has him starting and playing a lot of minutes, whatever minutes he gives, first half, second half, he's going to come in and just freaking go off, right? He's going to be a headache for somebody. Hopefully not a headache for Mark Byington. Hopefully the only headache is just finding a way to get in more minutes, but he's gonna come in. He's gonna be hell for somebody because he's a guy that he can score. He can score bunches once he's kind of a streaky guy. He can get pretty hot from the field. He's got a pretty good mid-range shot. He's somebody that I think he's 6'7", so he's kind of like a combo forward, not really like a true banger of a power forward, but like not kind of that point forward that Scottie Pippen was, that he revolutionized at that position. He's kind of just more of like your standard small forward that can do a lot of the things that forwards do and can do some things that guards can do. So he's kind of that combo guy, which, with Mark Byington's philosophy of positionless basketball, like maybe that fits in, like maybe there's a niche for him that he can carve out and say, okay, well, this is what we got. Maybe he does play the 3, McLaughlin play the 4, and Jalen Washington play the 5, with Nickel and Tanner playing, 1 and 2. Maybe, you got Frankie Collins in there. You've got Tyler Nickel that can play the 3 with Tanner and, and Collins or whoever, right? You got some guys now. You've got some options. There's different lineup rotations. There's different things you can do. A lot of guys are going to play a lot of quality minutes. And if you can get scoring out of your forwards without just rebounding and putbacks, like if you can actually work them into your offense, you're going to be in really good shape with that, because that's going to be something that can be a huge weapon for any team in this conference. Because yeah, it's great. If you have great scoring guards, that's phenomenal. But if your only scoring is coming from your guards and you're getting not a whole lot that's what Vanderbilt, that's what Mark Byington got this year. He got great scoring from his guards. Like Jason Edwards, one of the better scorers in the conference. Like Tyler Tanner was scoring. Tyler Nickel was scoring. AJ Hoggard at times was scoring. Those guys were the guards took most of the scoring, which is funny because everybody was a point guard. So technically it was only guards, but you got periodically you'd get McLaughlin with a good scoring game or Jalen Carey with a good scoring game. But they had so many duties down low that in the paint that maybe their scoring opportunities weren't quite there, because they were in there trying to bang around with a 6'10", 6'11", 7-footer, trying to get rebounds and block shots and, play in traffic. Now that you got some size down there, you have some options. You can free McLaughlin. You can put in Okirke and get him involved in the offense to help out the guards and give the guards more opportunities to get to the rim. You have different possibilities now. And I think this adds a lot of variety to the lineup. And I think you have way more variety in this lineup than you did in the previous lineup. The previous lineup was kind of very guard heavy. It was kind of very if we're not driving to the basket, we're not scoring. That's the kind of offense that Mark Byington had. And a lot of that was dictated by the personnel that he had, which is fine, but it is what it is. And he got to the NCAA tournament with a very limited team. This past year's team was super limited because they weren't big enough to compete in the paint. They weren't quite talented enough to compete from beyond the arc. They had to be especially hot on certain nights, and they just weren't that. They had good shooting sometimes, with sprinkled in with some great performances, and to offset that with some quite abysmal performances from beyond the arc. So it was very inconsistent, to be nice. So all they could really do was drive. And if they got rebounds, great. If they got those putbacks, great. And if they could turn you over and get momentum that way, that was great. But that's how they lost leads, is not being able to consistently shoot, not be able to consistently play in the paint. Well, now they've fixed that. So I'm very excited. If they can get to the first round and have a very good St. Mary's team on the ropes with limited ability, just as a unit, think about now. They have the front court that can rebound and play in the paint with those two guys. They have front court scoring now with Okirke, and McLaughlin can score a little bit, but I think his opportunities are going to open up a little bit. So now he maybe get some chances. All right, you have whatever you consider Tyler Nickel as, you have him as now your shooter. Now he can focus on shooting. and not have to play. He could do more guard stuff instead of more forward stuff. So he could be your point forward if you need to. And then you got guards that do that. Tyler Tanner is basically Jason Edwards with better defense. And then you got the two, you got the transfer guards. You've got, Frankie Collins, I think will be a really good piece from TCU. I'm really excited about him. So you've got options now. You've got different things you can do. You've got multiple ways to attack, which is really, really good. So I'm excited about that. I think this is going to be a good thing for what Mark Byington needs to do and what he wants to do. So I'm super excited about that. And we'll again, it's going to be an interesting ride as it comes down to it. But I'm excited to see what these transfers bring to the table. I mean, this is a transfer portal episode. I love it, man. I love it brings great opportunity. As much of a headache as the transfer portal can be, it brings so much great opportunity. So it's exciting to have. But speaking of not so exciting things, the baseball team, they have some thinking to do. What is that? I don't know. We'll talk about it, though. All right, wrapping up the show here, Locked On Vandy, on the Locked On Podcast Network, at Locked On Vandy on all social media platforms. That's where you want to find us. All right, reach out. Feedback is always great, right? But talked a lot about transfer portal. I really love it. I'm really a proponent of it, as long as it's used correctly. But more for that later. But the baseball team. Let's just say that they dropped a midweek game. Now, I know like I said, I was under the weather, stomach virus, all that stuff knocked me out for a couple of days. I'm kind of discombobulated, trying to get my head above water. I come to find out you lose an unacceptable game to MTSU. MTSU is a losing record, but like I said in the opener, like I'm not surprised this happened. It was like this whole, you've won 10 out of your last 12. Coming into this game, you just came off a series sweep against the Georgia Bulldogs, who was number one in the conference, maybe even in the country in home runs. They were a power hitting juggernaut, right? You just swept them, right? You just come off of a really good series also against God, like these days are all running together, but against Florida. 10 of your last 12. I mean, you really had some nice baseball in there. And Texas A&M's picking it up, by the way. That's a breath of fresh air. Like knowing you swept them and now seeing where they are, like they weren't as bad as everybody thought they were. So you're bound to have a midweek game where you're just not into it, And I know from the coaching perspective, like you can't have that. And I know that how frustrating that can be. And trust me, I've been there, not as a national championship winning baseball coach 2-time, but I know what that's like. I know how that is. And when you lose like that, it's not fun. It's very concerning. I get it. Like the bats weren't great, hitting wise, they left a small village on the base paths, as a Bob Uecker said in Major League. The pitching wasn't great situationally. They weren't great. They just weren't into it. They just weren't there mentally. And that's bound to happen. And as long as it happens midweek against MTSU, it's not really an expensive loss unless you get swept at Ole Miss, unless you just play like that against Ole Miss. Like then the MTSU game just becomes a symptom of a bigger problem, which could say that what's potentially out there, the message is potentially out there about the identity of this team is that it is very up and down like this, like drastic, like almost bipolar of a situation where it's like they're really, really good and then they nosedive into becoming a terrible team. So you got to keep that in mind as well. I'm not as worried about it because baseball is a sport that's easy to lose focus in. You lose 5-3, it's not like you got blown out. I'm not trying to excuse the loss, but okay, I get it. Let's see how this affects this upcoming series. And if it affects the upcoming series, then we will address that lack of focus as being a problem. Now, if I'm Tim Corbin, this is the biggest problem in the world. I get it. Yeah, Tim Corbin. According to Tim Corbin, this is the worst thing that could ever happen in the history of baseball. This is the worst loss they could ever take because lack of focus is inexcusable. Lack of focus gets you beat later on down the road. So what he's got to guard against is this complacency. It's all complacency. That's why Nick Saban is so great. That's why Bill Belichick is so great. Like those guys, the way they dealt with complacency, they don't let you get away with anything. They're harder on you after wins than they are losses because complacency is really your worst enemy. You lose a bad game, so what? Right? The team beats you, you just don't do things aren't going quite your way, so what? Right? As long as, as long as all the other things happen, you can fix those things. It's not great to lose, but you can fix those things. But when complacency, when lack of focus, lackadaisical things, like in a game that you feel like you should have won 15, you should have run ruled them, and you lose 5-3 in a way that's just kind of like nobody was interested in being there, that's a problem. And you got to address it. But to like us casual observers and guys who host a podcast, I'm not worried about it. He'll fix it. He's a two-time national championship winning coach. He didn't get there from nowhere. He'll fix it. He fixed the previous problem, which, team wasn't hitting. They out-homered Georgia. Fix that problem. I don't know if he can keep that, but he fixed it. And so here we go. But anyway, that's all the time I got. We'll talk more about this. We'll talk about more about what depth along the lines allows you to do creatively on both sides of the ball. We'll talk a lot about more transfer portal stuff as commits happen, what things look like for football, what things look like for baseball. And as Mark Byington continues to add pieces, we'll talk about basketball a little bit too. So whatever, we'll end the week with all of that. But until then, we'll see you on the flip side. Behave yourselves. Anchor down. Peace.